Information remains tough to come by as an army of federal agents and scientists try to track down the source of the anthrax. And the situation has put the White House very decidedly on the defensive.
We're working hard to find out who's doing this and bring them to justice. We're also working to develop measures necessary to protect American citizens and postal workers. But I can tell the American people that because of the hard work of many in our public health offices, I believe we saved a lot of lives, too, by responding as quickly as we have.
The president now believes his soldiers on the home front have an arsenal of new weapons thanks to the anti-terrorism bill he signed into law just yesterday.
It will help law enforcement to identify, to dismantle, to disrupt, and to punish terrorists before they strike.
Mr. Bush believes that goal is also enhanced by his efforts to rally much of the world behind America.
We put together a vast coalition of nations to slowly but surely encircle those who would terrorize and to send the message that their actions will not stand.
To that end, he met Thursday with the Crown Prince of Bahrain, a key U.S. ally in the Persian Gulf. The prince is the latest in a long series of leaders to whom Mr. Bush has been reaching out since September 11th. Our CBS News tally shows that since that day, he's met personally with 49 foreign leaders. He's spoken by phone to another 52, including 3 just yesterday.
The president this morning called Egyptian President Mubarak. The president also spoke this morning with German Chancellor Schroeder. The president also called President Chirac of France this morning.
Since taking office, Mr. Bush has met with more chiefs of state and heads of government than did any of his recent predecessors during their first 9 months in office. In fact, our CBS News tally shows that the number of such meetings now stands at 103. And the number goes up in the coming week as the president will meet with the Chancellor of Austria and the President of Nigeria. Russ?
Mark, the president touched on this in your piece, but what's the latest from the White House as to who could be behind this anthrax that's being found in these various letters?
The White House let it be known yesterday that government scientists now believe it would have required somebody with a PhD in microbiology and with access to a well-equipped laboratory to have produced the anthrax in that letter that was sent to the office of Senator Tom Daschle. Now, in the White House view, the good news is that it means that the anthrax was not necessarily produced by a hostile foreign government. Russ?
Okay. Mark Knoller at the White House. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next week.
Well, notice that Mark was wearing a coat, looked like a fairly heavy coat. Weather is changing. And, yeah, Ira Joe Fisher has wandered outside to check on things. How is it? It's chilly out there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Apparently, Mark was paying attention to the forecast. I wasn't.
Yeah, where's your coat?
I know.
Right,
Mark has it, for heaven's sake. Honest, Pete, I toyed with the idea of bringing up my top coat, and I said, nah, I didn't want to carry it up the stairs. Kind of wish I had now. It's very chilly out here. Let's talk about our weather, shall we? This is the way autumn is.
Enforcement to identify, to dismantle, to disrupt, and to punish terrorists before they strike.
Mr. Bush believes that goal is also enhanced by his efforts to rally much of the world behind America.
We put together a vast coalition of nations to slowly but surely encircle those who would terrorize and to send the message that their actions will not stand.
To that end, he met Thursday with the Crown Prince of Bahrain, a key U.S. ally in the Persian Gulf. The prince is the latest in a long series of leaders to whom Mr. Bush has been reaching out since September 11th. Our CBS News tally shows that since that day, he's met personally with 49 foreign leaders. He's spoken by phone to another 52, including 3 just yesterday.
The president this morning called Egyptian President Mubarak. The president also spoke this morning with German Chancellor Schroeder. The president also called President Chirac of France this morning.
Since taking office, Mr. Bush has met with more chiefs of state and heads of government than did
body. And then second of all, there's actually a very interesting study which came out in the New England Journal of Medicine just this past week, looking at the increasing incidence of drug resistance, and they theorized that the increasing use of antibiotics actually in cattle to prevent bacterial infections in cattle actually has caused increasing resistance in humans.
Because cattle feed contains antibiotics. Okay, let's continue on about some of the problems that can arise. Bacteria overgrowth.
Well, we don't hear much about this in the media, but in the medical world we worry about this all the time. There's a very delicate balance inside of our intestines of different types of bacteria, particularly lactobacilli, which we find in yogurt and milk and cheese, are real helpful to help us digest things, but we also have other bacteria in our gut. And what happens is when we take very strong antibiotics, we can actually suppress the lactobacilli, the helpful bacteria, and get an overgrowth of some of the other types of bacteria. So again, very important to use this under strict physician supervision. We look very carefully for these symptoms of bacterial overgrowth.
And bone growth problems.
Well, particularly with Cipro, people think that, you know, they're very worried, and it's totally understandable, but Cipro is not indicated for use in anybody under the age of 12 or for pregnant mothers because it's been shown to have bone growth problems in children. So again, if you're going to take Cipro, and particularly if you have a child at home, do not give them Cipro without speaking with their pediatrician.
Okay, so let's talk about when and when not to use antibiotics. And antibiotics are appropriate, you say, for example, strep throat, urinary tract infections, and prolonged sinus infections.
Well, you know, very important, Thalia, because I don't want to come on here and say that antibiotics are not good. They've really changed the way we practice medicine and are life-saving. These are examples of very common bacterial infections that are very treatable with antibiotics. And if we were going to use an antibiotic for one of those types of infections, we'd use a very narrow spectrum antibiotic for the most part, not something like Cipro, but antibiotics have been so helpful and continue to be important.
Okay, I have about 20 seconds left. When not to use antibiotics, common cold, viral infections, and the flu, and everybody's got the flu right now.
That's right. Most infections are viral. About 90% of infections are viral. And for these infections, antibiotics are not helpful. And if people, I often get the question from friends or patients, hey, I have the flu or a cold, just give me some antibiotics. And the answer is, you know, absolutely not, because antibiotics used improperly can promote drug resistance and are not helpful.
Yeah, the flu, stay home, feel better.
And drink liquids, that's right.
Right, exactly. Dr. Jordan Metzl, thanks so much. Good information as always. And we'll be right back with this weekend's new movies.
To lower 30,000 prices, Kmart needed help.
24 people in Washington with what they call suspicious symptoms. There are no new confirmed cases of anthrax.
One day after health officials detected new traces of anthrax on Capitol Hill, this time in 3 congressional offices in the House's Longworth building, the new findings indicate only low levels of contamination. Those staffers and all who visited the offices are now taking antibiotics as a precaution.
So we feel quite confident in the medications that we have that we will see no cases of anthrax out of the congressman's office.
The findings mean that at least trace levels of anthrax have now been found at 13 different sites from Capitol Hill to the Maryland and Virginia suburbs. That includes Mayo facilities that serve the White House, CIA, and the Supreme Court, which has been closed for anthrax testing. Mail for all those locations is first processed at Washington's main postal facility, already found to be contaminated by the letter to Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle, if not others that officials fear could be as yet undiscovered.
What we don't know is, and I've said at the outset of this investigation, if this is a situation where you have cross-contamination from the original Senator Daschle letter, or if there's another piece of mail out there that we need to be concerned about.
That's why about 68 tons of mail from Washington have been trucked to this plant in Lima, Ohio, where the materials will be sterilized. And thus far, officials say, more than 10,000 postal workers in Washington are now receiving antibiotics.
And we are able to provide medications to everyone who comes in that is appropriate to provide medication for.
With other anthrax infections in the Northeast, officials closed a 3rd postal facility in New Jersey, this one near Trenton, after the bacteria was discovered in a mail bin. Meanwhile, the Postal Service buried another one of its workers killed by anthrax. Final respects being paid today in Washington to Joseph Kersine included a procession of mail trucks. Even as the anthrax scare grows, experts say this may be just the first test for the country's public health system.
We need to be proactive, plan for the future, know that we've got emerging threats that are not the diseases we're used to, or diseases in a new form.
As for the source of these anthrax letters, that is still unknown. Officials saying while there is now reason to believe that domestic extremists could have been responsible, they still do not rule out the involvement of Osama bin Laden or his al-Qaeda terror network. John?
NBC's David Gregory at the White House. David, thanks. After September 11th, the U.S. was forced to focus on security. But long before the terrorist attack, at least one American city was already preparing. NBC's Shelley Smith reports.
San Jose, California, in the heart of the Silicon Valley, is home to companies like Adobe and eBay, now on the cutting edge of a different field, preparing for a terrorist attack.
What we believe is an inevitable effort to attack this country by terrorists using weapons of mass destruction.
For 4 years, Emergency Services Director Francis Winslow and other city leaders have been preparing for the worst, stockpiling antibiotics in secret warehouses around the city. If they need more, the CDC can ship 40 tons or a plane load in 2 days. Hospital emergency rooms are now equipped with bioterrorism manuals and more protective suits for the crews on the front lines of a terrorist attack. One of the most valuable additions to San Jose's terrorism response plan, gas detectors. Every hazmat team in the city has one. It's able to detect 9 classes of hazardous gases, including organophosphates, such as sarin nerve gas. 12 people were killed and more than 5,000 injured in Tokyo when terrorists placed sarin on a crowded subway.
This has now become their detector of choice. The hazardous materials team can use it every day, not only when they think it might be a terrorist attack, but anytime they go to an industrial environment.
San Jose put its terrorism plan to work when a train full of commuters collided with a truck. 37 people received minor injuries. 12 were taken to the hospital.
The techniques that we learned significantly speeded up our ability to evaluate and transport the patients.
San Jose plans to survive by preparing for terrorism in all its ugly forms, just in case. Shelley Smith, NBC News, San Jose.
And Homeland Security is the topic tomorrow on NBC's Meet the Press. White House Chief of Staff Andrew Card, House Majority Leader Dick Armey, and Democratic Senator John Edwards are all Tim Russert's guests. To the war in Afghanistan now, where the bombing is continuous, but a question continues to go unanswered. Just how effective is it? NBC's Nora O'Donnell joins us tonight from the Pentagon. Nora?
John, tonight the U.S. military begins week 4 in the bombing campaign, and the Pentagon concedes there will be no quick victories as Taliban forces appear to be digging in for a long fight.
Aboard the USS Carl Vinson, American warplanes ready for another day of round-the-clock attacks, unleashing the heaviest raids to date on the Taliban front lines. One pilot said he's met little resistance.
I've seen a little bit of AAA from the ground, a couple of just shoulder-fired Stinger missiles.
Yet despite weeks of punishing attacks, the U.S. has failed to break the Taliban's hold on Afghanistan or even help the Northern Alliance to make significant advances. In fact, the Taliban claim they've beaten back a new opposition push and captured and killed 5 opposition leaders during a battle in the northern city of Mazar-e-Sharif.
They're fanatical opponents. They've only had 1,000 airstrikes or so on them so far. And their strategy is to wait us out. They're dispersing their forces in urban areas, in mosques and schools.
And according to Pentagon officials, placing military vehicles near humanitarian aid. Today, smoke still billowed from a Red Cross warehouse, where 8 tons of bombs were mistakenly dropped in the past 2 days, destroying food and blankets for 55,000 people, an accident the Pentagon called a human targeting error.
And if all we see is bombing, and all we see is civilian casualties mounting, or the perception that that is the case, one of the results is that it's going to undermine the covert effort.
Tonight, in order to bolster Northern Alliance forces, Russia announced it will send $45 million in military aid to Afghanistan, including 40 tanks set to arrive before year's end. John?
NBC's Nora O'Donnell at the Pentagon. Nora, thanks. Increasingly, U.S. warplanes are focusing on the front line just north of Kabul. That's where NBC's Tom Aspel is tonight. Tom, what did you see?
John, we could hear warplanes overhead at dawn, and all morning they appeared to be hitting Kabul 40 miles to the south of us, but at midday they came north, 20 miles north of Kabul, to the Shamali Plain. That's where Taliban and Northern Alliance forces face each other across a maze of trenches. We saw jets flying at about 30,000 feet, bombing Taliban gun emplacements near Bagram Airport. Columns of dust and smoke visible from miles away there, and we counted 3 strikes within 30 minutes, all within the same place. Other reporters said there were more strikes on the trenches, which run roughly across the center of the Shamali Plain, John.
And Tom, what effect did all this have on the troops who were watching?
Well, clearly a morale booster for them today, but many of them expressing disappointment at the level of American airstrikes so far. They really need more weapons, and if they want to get to the gates of Kabul by winter, they need fresher and newer weapons. And they just worry that the bombing campaign is just not going to do the job. John?
NBC's Tom Aspel, north of Kabul, Afghanistan. Tom, thank you. Now, complicating everything is the weather. Case in point, a sandstorm has been blowing through an area further north in Afghanistan over the last day with hurricane-force winds. NBC's Kerry Sanders was in the middle of it.
It feels like we're on the tail end of this sandstorm, but locals say we're in for perhaps 2 more days of fierce winds. The winds in excess of 100 miles an hour at one point, tearing up the NBC dish and knocking down the tent with all the satellite equipment inside. There are at least 500,000 refugees in northern Afghanistan who are also having to weather these horrible conditions. Temperatures now in the 30s. The sandstorm at one point so bad, we had to put on these gas masks so we could breathe. It's an example of what U.S. forces may have to deal with when and if they hit the ground here. Weather that's very unpredictable and can make it very difficult just to survive. Kerry Sanders, NBC News, Kajabahuddin, Afghanistan.
And there was more fallout today from the Taliban's capture and execution of a key opposition leader. NBC's Ron Allen has that part of the story.
As mourners gathered at the home of the murdered Afghan opposition leader Abdul Haq, his allies vowed to continue his fight to overthrow the Taliban regime. But those allies actually are bitter rivals, some who met for the first time this week to plot strategy. Warring factions who tore Afghanistan apart during a decade of civil war, now struggling to put aside those differences and finally defeat the Taliban.
The challenge is that they should rise above those differences for a greater cause of the Afghan people. Whether they will be able to do that or not is something that remains to be seen.
America's key ally, Pakistan, continues to warn more should be done to help the opposition build a new broad-based government to replace the Taliban. The country's president remains uneasy with America's focus on military might.
I still maintain that it ought to be short because any prolongation of the operation is not in the interest of anybody, not even of the United States.
And certainly not Pakistan's. The largest anti-government and anti-American demonstration yet happened Friday. 50,000 protesters. And there are reports thousands of armed Pakistani militants are crossing into Afghanistan to defend the Taliban. Some Pakistanis who initially supported the U.S. attacks are now alarmed.
This is not good. This is against the credibility of United States. And this is not the right way.
Pakistan's president keeps walking a tightrope by supporting the U.S. and cracking down hard on protests. The latest challenge to the government, an ultimatum by religious leaders to stop supporting the U.S. in some 10 days or face widespread protests. Threats Pakistan so far has been able to keep under control. Ron Allen, NBC News, Islamabad, Pakistan.
When NBC Nightly News continues, the recovery effort at Ground Zero in New York.
Dogs love home cooking, or new pedigree little champions. Gently prepared, then sealed in our revolutionary flavor lock pouch. For the home-cooked taste dogs love.
Yeah. What are you doing in there? I'll be right there.
It's LensCrafters' best $99 offer ever. Right now, get a complete pair of glasses with DuraLens, our most scratch-resistant plastic lens for only $99. The $99 DuraLens event. This is one you don't want to miss.
I'm every man.
And every woman who ever suffered from frequent, persistent heartburn.
If you've treated your heartburn and changed your diet, but it comes back 2 or more days a week, then you may know about the burning pain of acid reflux disease.
But there's something about acid reflux that I didn't know.
Over time, that acid churning up can wear away the lining of your esophagus.
I didn't know.
I didn't know.
I didn't.
But today, there's a purple pill called Nexium. It's from the makers of Prilosec. Just 1 prescription Nexium a day gives many people complete resolution of heartburn symptoms.
That could mean complete heartburn relief.
And importantly, Nexium is also proven to heal erosions in the esophagus caused by acid reflux. Only a doctor can determine if you have this damage. Other serious stomach conditions may still exist. The most common side effects of Nexium and Prilosec are headache, diarrhea, and abdominal pain. So talk to your doctor and call this number for more information and for a free trial certificate for Nexium.
Relieve the heartburn, heal the damage. It's possible with today's purple pill called Nexium.
and I have tried to raise Derek right. We know his friends are a big influence, but we also know we can shape his values and thoughts.
Just by talking to him about...
Investigate and disrupt, and we've got a president who is clearly in charge and taking direct attention to what is happening. And Tom Ridge has only been on the job for 2 weeks, and he's doing a great job.
The one concern that people had, and let me show you this one last quote and we'll move to the war in Afghanistan, but this is from the Associated Press. One participant in the conference call for lawmakers said Robert Gibbs, a Defense Department official, reported the anthrax was, quote, of relative high quality, and, quote, there's an effort to downplay and not promote the abilities of the people doing this. This is way back on October 20th. Did the government deliberately attempt to withhold information so not to alarm people?
Absolutely not. The government has been working to make sure that we convey the facts when we know them. Again, the facts have been slow to come out here. We only have 2 very small samples of anthrax that we're able to analyze. And the analyzation of that anthrax shows that it is not naturally occurring. It is highly refined. But we didn't even have the final analysis of the most recent sample until the end of last week. So we're still learning our way through this process, but we're dealing with very few material facts, and we're trying to build a case out of that so that we can address the problem.
13 sites have been affected. Are there more than 1 or 2 letters?
I don't think we know. I really don't think that we have the definitive answer to that. It seems logical to me if Senator Daschle received a letter that others might have received a letter in Washington, D.C. But it's also plausible that that letter could have contaminated the Postal Service equipment, which then contaminated other aspects of our environment in Washington, D.C. So I just don't think we have the answer to that question yet.
What precautions are being taken to protect the president from touching mail that may be tainted by anthrax?
Well, all of the mail that the White House gets goes through a remote delivery system, and it's off-site. And even before September 11th, before I started working at the White House, the mail was handled at a remote facility where it was screened before it came into the White House complex. That is still the case. As you do know, that remote delivery site has been infected with anthrax, so that facility is shut down now, and it is a crime scene. So there has not been a lot of mail making it into the White House complex since last 2 weeks.
As the commander-in-chief, should the president, or has the president been vaccinated against anthrax?
Well, we won't comment about what security arrangements are made for the president, but the president does not have anthrax. I can tell you that he's in extremely good shape, and he is healthy, and he's doing a great job for the country, and I have no reason to believe that he's under any particular threat that has touched him. We know that there are lots of threats about the White House around the world, but this is really a president who is on top of the job and doing it very well.
Let me turn to the war in Afghanistan. This is the Washington Post headline yesterday. A week of setbacks tests U.S. patience in its plan of attack, the execution of a leading opposition figure by the Taliban, coupled with the errant U.S. bombings of an international committee on the Red Cross warehouse in Kabul, and the apparent retreat of rebel forces in the north yesterday, capped a discouraging week for the U.S. war in Afghanistan.
Well, you know, collateral damage is something that the United States tries to avoid, and we mitigate as much collateral damage as possible. We felt horrible when we learned that the Red Cross distribution facility or warehouse had been struck, but the vast majority of the work done by our military has been outstanding and right on target, and it's making a difference. And we're working very closely with a loose band of Northern Alliance members who are fighting on the ground to rid the Afghanistan people of the Taliban government so that they no longer can harbor terrorists. And we are making progress. But the president said that this would not be swift and easy. In fact, this is a long war that will be fought through many different battles. And we're going to make sure that we are ready to win the war, and we're going to be very persistent. So we have to be patient as we watch the war while the president is persistent in how he fights it.
Abdul Haq, the opposition to the Taliban leader who was abducted and killed by the Taliban, was he on a mission sponsored by the CIA?
Well, he'd been working with our people. I don't think he was on a particular mission sponsored by the CIA, but he has been clearly working with our forces to try to rid the Afghanistan country of the Taliban government, and especially their ability to harbor terrorists like the Al-Qaeda organization. And it's unfortunate that he did become a victim of this war. He was a strong leader, and we had hoped that he would be part of a leadership effort in a post-Taliban Afghanistan.
So he received no support of any kind from any government agency of the United States?
I'm not sure that the mission that he was on was connected with our government at that particular moment.
But prior to that, had he received?
I'm not going to comment about the activities of the CIA. They do a great job.
Let me turn to the bombing campaign. The Pentagon had announced last week that the Taliban had been eviscerated. Is that, quote, comment still operative?
Well, they've clearly been disrupted, and I don't think they're providing any leadership for the people of Afghanistan. In fact, the people of Afghanistan are crying out for more assistance, and we're providing it. This government has been the most compassionate government ever in terms of providing assistance during a war to people where you're fighting the war. But the Taliban government is not assisting its citizens, and it is now bunkered down themselves. I think they're being very parochial rather than leading in their country. And I do think that they are not a viable government anymore, and we're going to rout them out so that they no longer can harbor terrorists.
The administration, like in any war, is getting advice from all sides as to how to conduct it. On the ground, this is what the anti-Taliban forces of the Northern Alliance are saying. The American planes roared overhead at 1:30 p.m. today, and Sher Mohammed and his soldiers in the Northern Alliance paid little attention. In their current form, he said the strikes are doing more to bolster Taliban morale than to erode it. Asked if the American airstrikes here had made his forces eager to attack the Taliban, he laughed. That attack, he said, laughing with his soldiers, our artillery is better. Mr. Mohammed said the light initial bombing has set back negotiations with potential Taliban defectors. They were very afraid and had low morale, he said, referring to the period before the bombing. After a few attacks, their morale, the Taliban, was better. General Babajan, the commander of the Alliance forces here, scoffed. If the United States did this for 100 years, it's not enough.
Look, this battle is going to be fought on several different fronts in several different ways. We have a terrific team at the Defense Department in working with our allies, the Brits and others around the world, to make sure that all of the resources that are needed to fight this war are there. Again, this will not be a quick and easy and decisive action. This will require patience and persistence, and we're going to provide both. But we have good targeting. We are running out of targets, and we're working closely with the loose band of tribal leaders called the Northern Alliance to make sure we have a better understanding of the targets as we make our way up to the Uzbekistan border and hopefully cut off the supply lines of the Taliban. But we are accomplishing our mission. The Taliban is disrupted. They are not comfortable as they hide. And we know that they are not comfortable, and we are going to get them so that they can no longer harbor terrorists.
A prominent American veteran, John McCain, a Republican senator, weighed in with this. We have been sparing in the amount of ordnance we've dropped on the Taliban front lines. We've not yet employed B-2s, B-52s, the most destructive weapons in our airborne arsenal against them. We shouldn't fight this war in increments. The Taliban and their terrorist allies are indeed tough fighters. They'll need to experience a more impressive display of American firepower before they contemplate surrender. And then McCain went on and added this: fighting this war in half measure will only give our enemies time and opportunity to strike us again. We cannot fight it without casualties. We cannot fight it without taking unintended damage to humanitarian and political interest. Advice from John McCain suggesting an all-out war and almost ignore any kind of political or humanitarian risk. Fight the war to win.
Well, we are going to win this war, and we're fighting it to win the war. At the same time, we're providing humanitarian assistance to the people of Afghanistan who are in desperate need of food and clothing, and our government is spending hundreds of millions of dollars to get that aid to them. But we are going after the Taliban government, and we will get the Taliban government, and we will get the al-Qaeda organization and Osama bin Laden.
Will it take ground troops, a sizable number?
Well, the Northern Alliance is providing a lot of the support on the ground right now, and we will be working with them and our allies to make sure that they have what they need to get the job done, but we're also ready to do the job too.
Even if it means significant amount of ground troops?
Well, let's not go there yet, Tim. I think that we're going to use everything we can to make sure that this war is won. Secretary Rumsfeld and his team have a great plan, and we're working with the Commander-in-Charge, General Tom Franks, to make sure that he has what he needs, and I'm confident that we will win this war. But it's not going to be a quick and easy and decisive one-battle session.
It could take years.
It could take years, but we're going to do everything we can to rout terrorists out of Afghanistan and then get them around the rest of the world.
The president of Pakistan, General Musharraf, weighed in yesterday. He said that military action must be brought to an end as soon as possible, and that if it is unable to achieve its military goals at a certain time, we need to switch to a political strategy.
Well, the war can end quickly if Osama bin Laden and the 15 top lieutenants of the Al-Qaeda organization are turned over for justice, and that the Taliban government no longer is in a position where they can harbor terrorists. I don't think that's likely to happen in the next few weeks. We're going to take the battle to where we have to take it, and we're going to do what we have to do to win it.
Are you concerned about destabilizing Pakistan?
We're working closely with General Musharraf, and we are very grateful for the support that the Pakistani government has given us, and the Pakistani people, I might add, as well as the nations in that part of the world. So this is a coordinated effort. You know, this really is good versus evil. And the Pakistani government has joined the side of the good, and as have other nations around the world, and good will prevail.
And his government is secure at this moment?
I believe that General Musharraf's government is secure.
Let me turn to Israel. As you know, a cabinet member in the Israeli government was assassinated. The Israelis responded by bringing tanks into Bethlehem and some other places to try to respond. This morning in Hadera, a city in northern Israel, a terrorist shot at least 10 people. There's been pressure by the United States for the Israelis to pull their tanks and equipment out. In light of this attack this morning, does the United States still insist the Israelis do that?
We've got to get the level of violence down in the Middle East, especially between Israel and the Palestinian people. And both sides should work hard to minimize the level of violence that is there. I think it will be almost impossible to eliminate violence, but they should minimize the level of violence. We'd like to see the Israeli Defense Forces withdraw from Area A in the Palestinian-occupied territory. But this is really something that requires tremendous diplomacy, and Secretary Powell is on the phone almost every single day with the Prime Minister of Israel and with the Palestinian authorities to try to get them to lower the level of angst so that they can get back to a process that would lead them toward the Mitchell Plan. But this is very tough, and it's going to be very tough over the next few days. I was disappointed to learn of the outbreak of violence that took place just recently.
Fred Francis of NBC News interviewed Yasser Arafat for tomorrow's Today Show. I want to show you a small exchange when Fred asked him about what's going on in the Middle East.
Do you think the Israeli government is ignoring the United States government?
It had been declared openly in their mass media. They are not intending to listen to the Americans or to the Europeans or to the United Nations or to the Russians.
Yasser Arafat using the request of the United States to remove its tanks, in effect, against Israel.
We've been talking very carefully with both sides to try to mitigate the damage. I'm going to let Secretary Powell handle this diplomatic task the way he has been. Clearly, we've got to get the level of violence down so that the parties can get back to a peace process.
Let me turn to airport security.
A long-term change for all of us, and I believe it's a long-term change. I believe that, and I met with postal workers this week and reviewed how our health department and the fire department can work with them on issues of anthrax and other things. You know, I have no reason to think it's going to happen here, but you do have to be, you don't want to be alarmist, but you do have to be ready, and I think that's going to be the situation. I never thought I'd read in the headlines of the paper, you know, people dying from anthrax contamination. We are seeing things happen in our society, in our world, that I never thought that I would see. So, but I do think it's a permanent change. And for the city government, it's going to require us to develop through our health department, fire department, responses. But look, I'm not kidding anybody. You go out and look at all the targets out there for a terrorist, and there are as many targets as places you can see. We can only do so many things to keep people safe.
Do you think it will require shifting of priorities, certainly financial priorities?
Yeah, Kitty, I think that it does, and it's very difficult in this economic time to sit here and tell you that we're shifting priorities to more money for safety, but I think clearly we have to. The fire chief has issued a report to council that says if we're going to be in a position to be able to respond, we're going to need this training and we're going to need this equipment. Well, if it's the first duty of government to protect people, then we're going to have to figure out how to get that done.
So the budget will have to change.
I think the budget, you know, is going to have to change, and I think it's going to have to, you know, just as we are suggesting we need another recruit class next year because of the 100 and some shootings and the neighbors asking us for more community policing, fire has the same problem.
Well, we'll be right back after some quick commercials. You're watching Hot Seat on Channel 9.
Is pick a place like Burnett Avenue and say this is the place we're gonna make a difference. Now, as you know, Burnett Avenue has had proposals in the last few years for housing, and the neighborhood didn't want that. We obviously are concentrating on more security. There's the Ronald McDonald House that has now been built that I think moves in the right direction. But I would like to see Burnett Avenue become kind of an example of urban revitalization. It's been such a key part of that neighborhood for so many years, but at the same time, as you know, it's been in decline for not just the last 10 years.
What will you do? I mean, I'm very curious to know, like, we've got this strong mayor proposal, we've got this huge problem in that area, and to me, that 3-block area or 4-block area is a prime example of, hey, listen, let's do something. Let's say these are terrible problems that are represented throughout our city. Let's say this is ground zero.
Well, starting with the Herald offices.
And I think it is ground zero, but I think if you take the hospital, and I've talked to the hospital about this. Now, the hospital's not always been viewed as such a great neighbor to all the folks there. I happen to think that they have a tremendous amount to offer with the development along that block. If you form that partnership, you get the banks, the large lending institutions involved, and you really begin to create a synergy around the development of small business and Eric, and I know some people objected to this, and housing in that corridor, because you need, one of the things I think about when I go to that strip is there just aren't enough people walking around it. You need to develop that.
Well, at 2 o'clock in the morning, there are a lot of people.
Let me ask
Commerce is alive and well.
this. You sound, Mayor, as though you have passion on these issues, but there are some people who suggest that maybe you don't really have the fire in the belly for the next go-round, and they point to the fact that you haven't started airing any television commercials, at least haven't run any since the primary. Can you tell us what the thinking is behind that and why you haven't tried to define the issues on TV?
I spent too much money in the pre-primary before that September primary where I didn't fare very well. But I also have focused, Fred, and I believe this election is about turnout. So I've spent a great deal of my financial resources, not so much on television, but on trying to turn out voters that are identified as being for me. So that was a conscious decision to take a lot of resources and put it into that as opposed to television. But I will be on television starting tonight, and I will be on for the rest of the week, and it will be a comparative ad. And I think, given the fact that Mr. Fuller's chosen not to debate, a comparative ad is something people deserve to see.
Can you give us a quick preview?
It compares our records on things like police, on how we would handle the curfew, because, you know, he said that my declaration of the curfew after the Roach trial was unnecessary, and I took some umbrage to that. I mean, I didn't think that was a fair, and it's about experience. It's just about the ability to get the city through this difficult time.
When you talk about voters who are identified as being for me, how much is this election a referendum on race issues?
Well, Peter, nobody's going to kid anybody. I mean, I don't expect to get more than 50% of the African-American community in this election. I'm working very hard to do that. I think people are going to vote their self-interest, and we'll see what happens.
We've got to take a break. We'll be right back with our favorite part of the show, What They're Not Telling Us.
I'm going to be late for my own wedding.
No worries.
My new Subaru Outback's more stable in a turn than a Lexus RX 300. Gets better gas mileage than a Ford Explorer. And like every Subaru, has the added traction of all-wheel drive.
Subaru Outback, the world's first sport utility wagon.
The rugged outdoorsy type. Nice choice.
Now you can get an APR as low as 2.9% on all 2002 Outback models.
Hundreds of members of the New York Fire and Police Departments lost their lives by saving others at the World Trade Center. Please join me in 400 malls across the country in saying thank you by making a donation to help the families of these heroes who are no longer here to take care of their loved ones.
Make your donations at these local malls, Eastgate Mall, Town Mall, and Tri-County Mall.
time on Hot Seat when we try to let you in on some of the things that for one reason or another, folks just won't say. So let's find out what they're not telling us. Peter Bronson, lead us off.
My unscientific poll of council members shows that if they could go back 5 months and take a mulligan, most would tee up city manager John Shirey and fire him on the spot instead of keeping him as a lame duck for 6 months. That's what Jim Tarbell wanted to do, but certain unnamed critics who look a lot like me said it would be too disruptive. Well, Jim was right.
Eric Gurney.
Our city and region are very proud of the healthcare system. As you know, there is a levy on the ballot for funding health. As well, there is a dispute over which hospital will get the money. What they're not telling you is that the University of Cincinnati, the Health Alliance, Good Sam, and TriHealth will work out an amicable solution so the levy won't be defeated.
Fred Nelson.
They're not telling us the stories surrounding what happened when the U.S. House of Representatives went back into session following its ill-advised anthrax break. Under the able direction of Ohio Congressman Bob Ney, another government facility was converted into congressional staff space, with each representative limited to 3 key staffers, 1 laptop computer, and eventually a couple phone lines. That building is so immense that cell phones don't work there. Staffers scrambled to find out where their colleagues were housed and to establish a rudimentary communication system linking political allies. Members of Congress themselves set up shop in the hallways of the Capitol building and even on the lawn. The disruption may have distracted members somewhat from their official duties. The House, for example, this week passed a very flawed tax bill loaded with corporate giveaways, but our representatives regrouped well and demonstrated again that the system can function under difficult circumstances.
Katie Morgan.
Often it's the smaller things that matter. Amidst all the fuss over developing a downtown stocked with stadiums, anchor department stores, big convention centers, and a development called the Banks, some smaller, quieter projects are in fact turning our downtown into something unique, a cultural center. The latest example comes from the University of Cincinnati. UC has just opened a gallery space for local and regional artists at the west end of 4th Street. But what the university hasn't told us loudly is that it owns a building on 7th and Main that it will renovate for classrooms and a permanent gallery, just a stone's throw from the Aronoff and a couple blocks from the future Contemporary Arts Center. This gallery demonstrates a commitment to the downtown by the region's major educational institution and moves the downtown toward its rightful role as the region's cultural heart.
Aaron Herzig.
What they're not telling us is that while the election season is winding down north of the river, politics are just starting to heat up on the southern shores. As predicted, Democrat Patrick Hughes is challenging Republican incumbent Dick Murgatroyd for Kenton County Judge Executive. And Hughes isn't playing around in his attempt to unseat Murgatroyd. The young attorney already has raised $70,000, and the election's still 13 months away. Commonwealth pundits say this race may well get pretty nasty as Democrat Hughes tries to run to the right of Republican Murgatroyd. Sounds to me like Portune versus Bettinghouse, round 2. Now, if you know something they're not telling us, let us know. Send us an email at hotseat@wcpo.com. Give us a call on the Hot Seat hotline, 513-852-4099, or write to us at Hot Seat, WCPO TV, 500 Central Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45202. Well, that's all the time we have for this special edition of Hot Seat. We'd like
in New York, New Jersey, and Washington, D.C., just checking the environment and some of the facilities in these communities. So again, it's a very, very aggressive approach that the Center for Disease Control, Health and Human Services, the FBI, the Department of Justice, they got their arms around this. They're working real hard to try to identify the source.
All right, let's move on to that new warning issued by Attorney General John Ashcroft. There are some people who believe when a similar warning was issued on October 11th that could have averted an attack. Do you agree?
Well, I think that's entirely possible. You know, one of the challenges I think we have in the country right now, Katie, is that since September 11th, the environment has changed dramatically. And as a peaceful, welcoming country, it's very difficult for us to deal with the notion of evil that all of us believe that is in our midst. And I think one of the best ways for us to deal with this evil and to do our part in the war against terrorism is to be mindful of the potential for harm. Be mindful that as even individual citizens can help us in combating terrorism. So we raise the level of awareness, and we'll never know whether the alert 2 weeks ago frustrated a potential terrorist attack. We'll never know that. But given the convergence of some of the information we received the other day, it's either, I had 2 choices to make. We have 2 choices to make. Either with that information, we remain silent, or we tell America what we know. It may not be much because it's not specific, but frankly, I believe America would want to know, and that's the reason we decided to put them on heightened alert. And that's the security personnel in the mall, the local police officer, the folks at the airports, just everybody to be wary, alert. Don't let our guard down.
And in fact, we only have a few seconds left, Governor Ridge, but can you tell what kind of security measures have been put in place in the wake of this new warning?
Well, I had a good conversation yesterday with the governors of the 50 states. And again, the alert goes out to 18,000 local police agencies. EPA and Commerce and other agencies send out alert to the private sector. So it's a heightened awareness, heightened alert. We say to America and we say to the terrorists, we're not going to let our guard down. All right, Governor Tom Ridge. Governor Ridge, thank you very much for talking with us this morning. Appreciate it. And we'll be back with more of Today right after this.
Back now, 8 o'clock. Yeah, we got the flags flying in Central Park. That's the Yankees on the left, Diamondbacks on the right. They meet in Game 3 tonight at Yankee Stadium. Even the president's going to be there.
Whose flag is higher? I think there's a controversy brewing there in Central Park.
Well, there's one team that's defending champions now 3 times running, but the early show flag was in the middle.
There you go.
Flying highest.
Just to be safe.
No, because we made
night.
it. That's
you know,
why.
it's a big night.
It's a very big night.
We've got basketball.
Michael Jordan making his return to basketball tonight at the Garden.
Yes, and you're going.
Yes, I'll be there.
Yes, I asked Brian, what are you doing tonight? Oh, I'm going to Michael's Open.
What'd you think? I met the gloved one?
Yeah, I didn't know. And baseball, it's very exciting.
And baseball, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Curt Schilling is going to be along in this hour. He's not pitching tonight, but he might pitch tomorrow night. Might pitch Game 5. We'll talk to him. We'll also talk with a whole bunch of authors who have a musical group, and they're anxious to talk about it.
Also this morning, our Get a Job series continues. Dale Haddon will be here as well with some thoughtful and stylish ways to stay in touch with family and friends during this difficult time.
Okay, let's go on over to the news desk where Julie Chen is in business this morning. Jules, good morning.
Good morning, Brian to Jane. Good morning, everyone. The United States is on high alert this morning after the government issued a warning about a new terrorist threat. Diana Olick is in Washington with the story. Good morning, Diana.
Good morning, Julie. Late yesterday, the nation's Attorney General put Americans on alert for the second time this month. He said there is credible evidence from intelligence sources that the country should be on the lookout for some other kind of attack. He didn't say where, he didn't say when, or even how, just that it could be sometime in the next week. At 7:40 this morning, the Director of Homeland Security told Jane Americans should not change their daily lives, but should be on the lookout.
I recommend the Americans go to work as they had planned, take the kids to school and pick them up as they had planned. If they've got extracurricular activities, go about their business. But I also recommend in this war against terrorism on this battlefield we call the United States, we're proud to call it home, that they just be more alert.
Yesterday, the director of the FBI said that while they don't know what kind of attack to expect, they do not believe it will be related to the current anthrax crisis. Julie?
Diana Olick in Washington, thank you. 2 new anthrax cases are under investigation. New Jersey authorities say a woman with skin anthrax is the first victim in that state not connected to the post office. In New York, a worker at a Manhattan hospital may have the more dangerous inhalation anthrax, and officials don't know how she got it. In Afghanistan, U.S. warplanes are pounding Taliban positions, and President Bush says that strategy won't change, despite calls for a large American ground presence. Today, in neighboring Uzbekistan, the commander of the U.S. military action, General Tommy Franks, denied suggestions that the American operation has stalled.
We're committed to this for as long as it takes. And so, in my view, it is not at all stalemated.
A growing part of the U.S. campaign involves supporting anti-Taliban forces. At 7:09 this morning, Abdullah of the United Front told Jane, so far, so good.
I'm optimistic that we will going to win this war. It will take time. The result should be there, the determination. And with that, I think we can achieve the common objective.
Abdullah says the U.S. airstrikes are diminishing the capacity of the Taliban. A new poll finds the number of Americans expecting another terrorist attack has been growing. Bill Plant is at the White House with the story. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Julie. That's right. Americans are increasingly worried about the possibility of new terrorist attacks. But even so, President Bush's job approval rating remains near its all-time high. At the first meeting of his Homeland Security Council, the president urged Americans to stay on the alert, but he also urged them to get on with their lives.
I recognize it's a fine balance. Every American is a soldier, and every citizen is in this fight, and I am proud of our country. Our country is united and strong, and we're prepared.
The number of Americans expecting another attack has grown steadily since September 11th. More than half believe it's very likely. And as that number grows, the public's confidence in the government's ability to protect it is shrinking. Less than 1 person in 5 has a great deal of confidence. In the wake of the anthrax attacks, more than half of those surveyed do not think that either the federal government or state and local jurisdictions have done enough to prepare. People are almost evenly divided on the question of whether the government is telling them everything they need to know about anthrax. And among people under 30, almost 2/3 think that they aren't getting the full story. 3 weeks into the war, the people in our survey don't think it's going as well as it was at the outset. But an overwhelming majority accepts the administration argument that the war will take time, expecting it to last a year or longer. At his Homeland Security meeting, the president also announced tougher rules for immigration and for student visas, as well as a terrorist tracking force to look for suspects. Today, Mr. Bush heads to a suburban Washington high school where he'll inaugurate a program which aims to put students in touch with history by letting them hear from veterans. Julie?
Thank you, Bill Plant at the White House. Now here's Dan Rather with a preview of tonight's CBS Evening News.
Tonight on CBS, after the September 11th attacks, the government blanketed U.S. airports with extra security. How effective is it? Eye on America investigates later only on the CBS Evening News.
And that is the news this morning. Now here's Jane.
All right, Julie, thank you. More than 1 million Americans are looking to replace jobs they have lost this year. And in troubled industries like tourism and the airlines, the attacks of September 11th compounded an already bad situation. But statistics don't tell the whole story. So this morning in our continuing Get a Job series, we're looking at some of the faces behind the numbers.
I always felt like I was a company man.
Arthur White spent 23 years as a product engineer for AT&T, Lucent, then a year. Same company, different names. But in April, he and thousands of others were laid off.
It was a total shock. I did not expect it at all.
The news hit especially hard. White has 2 sons who need constant medical care.
There you go.
Suffering from a disease that makes them unable to communicate.
Excellent, Chris.
White lost his job just 4 years shy of reaching his pension.
I would have got at least 90% of the medical expense paid. As I stand now, I get none of that. The medical benefits I have right now runs out in December.
And that's not all. White, like many Lucent workers, had his retirement money tied to stock options. A share of Lucent stock worth $80 less than 2 years ago is now worth only $6.
My profits were totally decimated in that 401k.
Despite the setback, White still thought he could take his talents elsewhere.
When I first was laid off, I was gun-ho because I figured there's a lot of different companies out there that could use my expertise.
That hasn't happened yet. And even before September's terror attacks, American companies were already laying off workers by the thousands. And then came September 11th.
Companies that were not laid off at the time I was laid off are now laid off. So it has gotten worse.
Especially in Central Florida, where Arthur White lives, a region heavily dependent on tourism.
We believe unemployment may end up around the 5.5%. That's up from 2%, and that is a huge hit.
Orlando is one ring in a huge ripple effect. What happened when so many Americans changed their minds about getting on a plane was this. Boeing and all the major airlines announced major layoffs. More than 100,000 jobs lost. Not just pilots and flight attendants, but mechanics too, like Grady Willis.
Just aggravated, the whole situation. This was my dream job, to come and work for a major airline.
Most carriers cut schedules by 20%. And even with government bailouts, reservations clerk Liz Moody found herself out of work.
Everybody thought that it would help the economy, would help the employees by more or less securing their jobs. But the day after they got the money, we got a notice that our jobs were eliminated.
For employees who remain, there's less work outside and less business inside. Fewer travelers mean fewer hotel bookings. Labor leaders say 1 million hotel workers have lost jobs or had hours reduced during the past month. Take Irma Alvarez, a hotel housekeeper for 7 years.
They just say, today is your last day, take your check, and that's it.
When you say layoff in our industry, it's not like it's a furlough or a temporary thing. This is a drastic hit on most people's pocketbooks, and it has dramatic effects on their family and their livelihood.
And so it goes, from idle taxis to near-empty theme parks. At Walt Disney World, the impact is not lost on visitors.
The people that are employed here at Disney buy automobiles, they buy television sets, they make all those purchases, and now they're getting their hours cut back, so they can't do that.
But to some, a bad economy could mean a good opportunity. Career counselor Patty Wilson says the terror attacks have forced many to re-examine what they want in a job.
And if that means going back to being a school teacher or looking for jobs in nonprofit or being a volunteer, it's far more attractive to people now than it was before 9/11.
Tomorrow, we'll wrap up our series with people who are looking for more meaningful jobs instead of simply working for a paycheck. For more tips on how to land a dream job, just log on to CBS.com and click on The Early Show.
Waiting for menopause to worry about the risk of osteoporosis? If you're past 40, you're losing bone mass now. Take Oscal, the calcium supplement. Proven effective in more clinical...
Reports that the Al-Qaeda network may have infiltrated the Pakistani intelligence service. What can you tell us about that?
I meet frequently with the top leadership of the Pakistani intelligence, and I can tell you that there has again been a sea change in that organization as well. They support President Musharraf in his 180 flip in the policy with regard to the Taliban. They are working with us in ways that are unprecedented in sharing intel, working on joint intel projects in ways that I can't really go into, but let me assure you are absolutely no daylight between the Pakistani intelligence and our own. Now, of course, changing an institution and changing a policy is almost like turning an aircraft carrier around. You're going to have some residual people perhaps in there, but I think this is well understood by the Pakistanis, and we do not regard it as an obstacle to our own cooperation with them.
Well, Wendy Chamberlain, U.S. Ambassador to Pakistan, I hope you'll talk with us again. You certainly have a very big and important job, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
Up next, Michael Jordan's comeback. But first, these messages.
You work on it.
You think on
You
it.
play on it.
It was kind of like this dream I'd always
Spend
had.
all day on it.
Getting into something. Chill on
Talk
it.
on
Do
it.
homework on it.
Relax on it.
It's really warm. It's comforting. Entertain on it. Pass the time.
Watch TV.
Romance. Drift away.
Think on it.
Being able to be there for hours.
You spend your life on it. Shouldn't it be the furniture you've always wanted?
And now it's easy with the Simple Finance Plan. Only at Ethan Allen.
Furniture built for your life.
At a price you can actually live with.
Sugar-free has never tasted sweeter. Enjoy Smucker's sugar-free preserves. All the taste with no sugar. With a name like Smucker's, it has to be good.
To lower 30,000 prices, Kmart needed help.
Come and save a ton when Kmart lowers prices. With Blue Light always. Low prices.
Get down to Kmart for low prices every day.
Why do I eat?
Why do I eat Healthy Choice Beef Tips Portobello? Because it has big tender chunks of beef.
Because it tastes great.
Did I mention it tastes great?
Because my body needs balanced nutrition. Why do I eat Healthy Choice?
Beef Tips Portobello?
It helps me do the things I like to do. That's why.
Maximum impact. No clumps. Almay One Coat Mascara. Almay, the pure source for beautiful.
Totino's pizza rolls are so easy, kids can make them on their own. Pepperoni pizza stuffed into a bite-sized roll. Totino's, it's how kids help themselves.
Up to 10% of your calories should come from protein, and eggs are a good, convenient source of high-quality protein.
Hospital officials say they have done all they can to, but warn they could be overwhelmed if they are flooded by casualties. 12 News reporter Dennison Keller was at today's hearing and joins us live with more. Dennison.
Well, Rob, members of the security task force went before lawmakers in the city's health department, and they talked about anti-terrorism activities. And for a while, it kind of seemed like a go-get-em session. The police said, we're ready. The fire division said, we could use some more money and personnel, but we're ready. The water division said, we're ready. And then it came time for the hospital representative to answer some questions. If there is a crack in the tri-state's readiness for a terrorist attack, city council members learned it could be in the area's hospital system.
Franciscan Mount Arion diversion of Hotel 1500 hours at 10:49.
Diversions continue to be a problem for local healthcare facilities. Nursing and staffing shortages routinely force hospitals to turn patients away and send them to other medical centers. The number of diversions reached a critical level last flu season, and a trauma surgeon at University Hospital says he's not sure what will happen if the area is hit with an attack.
We operate at 95, 98% capacity all the time now. That means that on any given night for our hospital, for any other hospital, that additional 5 to 10 patients puts us over the top and makes us entirely full. Well, that may be economically an efficient way to run a hospital, but to be prepared for a disaster, it's not going to work.
All of the hospitals do have disaster plans in place that would bring in more staff. They include offering bigger incentives for overtime. They can have their managers who still hold medical licenses work with patients. They can halt all elective procedures. Plus, there are disaster medical assistance teams across the country that can be deployed here. All of it will help. But will it be enough to handle a large-scale disaster?
I quite honestly and frankly don't have an answer for you. That's quite a complex question, but one which people are concerned about.
And this problem is not unique to Cincinnati. Many other cities this size are having big problems with diversions. And Dr. Johannickman testified today that actually Cincinnati is better prepared than most other of those cities because they've done so much advanced planning for the past several years. In fact, he is also an Air Force reservist who works for the Air Force Surgeon General. And the Surgeon General is considering using Cincinnati as a model city for terrorism preparedness. Rob?
Interesting. Dennison, thanks very much. Our 12 in Touch poll tonight asks if you're confident the Tri-State is prepared to deal with a terrorist attack. Call 12 in Touch at 345-1212. The call is free. We'll have the latest results at 6:25. The Tri-State today responded on several fronts to the threat of terrorism.
Ohio Governor Bob Taft announced his support for 2 anti-terrorism bills. One proposal makes terrorist attacks a state offense. The other plan addresses terrorist hoaxes. That tops our continuing coverage of America's response to terrorism.
With these bills, Ohio will have an updated criminal code expressly addressing terrorism and the realities that we have faced as a state and a nation since the events of September 11th changed our lives.
Current Ohio law has only 4 references to terrorism. This first bill would create new offenses for terrorism and make some punishable by death. The second bill creates the offense of a terrorist hoax. Those convicted could face up to 10 years in prison.
2 more anthrax cases were revealed today in New York. A 61-year-old woman is said to be fighting to survive an inhaled anthrax infection. The woman works at the Eye, Ear, and Throat Hospital in New York City. And a second New Jersey postal worker also has the inhaled form of anthrax. She has been released now from the hospital, we're told. There are now 17 confirmed cases of anthrax. U.S. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld today acknowledged for the first time that a modest number of U.S. troops are in Afghanistan on the ground. They are working with anti-Taliban forces and helping to call in airstrikes. Rumsfeld says about half of the bombing is now aimed at helping the United Front.